Hello friends, welcome to my YouTube channel RJK Tutorials. So today I'm going to give the introduction to the basic concepts of statistics, like what is the definition of a statistics, importance or characteristic feature of statistics, limitation of statistics, classification of data, and other aspects. Now, coming to the introduction of statistics. So statistics is generally used to mean a quantitative aspect of data management, but as a subject of study, it refers to the body of principles and procedures developed for collection, classification, summarization, and interpretation of data. So we mean to say that the statistics includes all those principles and procedures that we develop for collection, classification, summarization, and interpretation of data. So this is what you basically mean by statistics. So talking about the statistics as its origin, in Latin word it is called as status. In Italian uh, language it's called as a statista. In German term it is called statistic. So all of this particular the definitions basically mean the political state. So in ancient times, the beginning of statistics was made to meet the requirement of the state primarily, hence the name it is called as statistics. So it means that in those days, statistics was used as a means or the tools to solve various political issues. Now, for example, collecting of revenue, minting of coins, and the branding of horses. So all these things are done those days. Both political and military aspects were dealt by using the statistics. So that is why statistics is a very ancient subject. In fact, if you look at the overall the history of statistics, we have a recorded history of statistics as back as 3000 BC, where in ancient Egypt statistics were used for construction of pyramids. In India, we have the written codes of statistics in Arthashastra given by Chanakya, where statistics were used in those days to measure the area of land, to collect the taxes from peasants. Statistics were used to mark the horses, soldiers. Statistics were used for converting one type of currency to others. So in this way, we have a lot of application of statistics in the ancient world. So that is why statistics is more related to the political state. So the term statistics is generally used in two senses. The first one is the plural sense or the singular sense. So according to plural sense, statistics refers to a numerical statement of facts related to any field of inquiry, such as data related to income, expenditure, population, etc. So we mean that the statistics in plural sense refers to the pluralistic principle or aspect of statistics. That means we're going to take the broader aspect of statistics into consideration. Now, in statistics, we use the numerical data and we collect this numerical data from different aspects. Now, let us take the example of the law of demand. You know that law of demand basically says that when price is less, the demand for a commodity increases. When price increases, demand for a commodity decreases. But apart from price, there are other aspects which we have to look into consideration, which is going to influence the demand for a product. So it can include the income of the consumer, the expenditure of a consumer, the taste and preferences of the population, the advertising or marketing aspects of a particular company for a particular product. So these things are going to influence the demand for a particular commodity. So therefore, not only the price plays an important role, the income, the expenditure, the taste and preferences of population also equally taken into consideration to study the demand for a particular product or a commodity. So in this sense, we are going to analyze the various numerical data or aspects into consideration. So in that sense, the statistics becomes a plural sense. So definition of statistics. based on this pluralistic principle given by Bowley. So according to him, statistics are numerical statements of facts in any department of inquiry placed in relation to each other. So this is what the Bowley says. And according to Yule and Kendall, the statistics basically mean a quantitative data affected to a marked extent by multiplicity of causes. That means we're going to study the statistics by using the quantitative data and how these quantitative data are going to influence the outcome by multiplicity of causes. So that is what the Yule and Kental have analyzed. So they are given this definition based upon the pluralistic principle. So based upon the pluralistic principle, we have the various characteristic features of statistics. So according to that, first one is aggregation of facts. So in statistics, we never deal with a single number. So single number doesn't give uh, conclusion. So therefore, a singular number does not constitute statistics as no conclusion can be drawn from it. So only aggregate of facts capable of offering meaningful information basically constitute statistics. So according to this characteristic feature, we are telling that statistics deals with averages or deals with the aggregation of facts. So second one is numerically expressed. Since statistics is a branch of mathematics, since it deals with quantitative data, so we're going to express the numbers. So these numbers are quantitative in nature. So statistics never deals with the qualitative data like rich, poor, beautiful, big, intelligence. So these things cannot be defined in statistics. And the third characteristic feature is it is affected by multiple causes. So this I already explained how the demand for a particular commodity not only is influenced by price, various factors also taken into consideration: the supply factor, the taste and preference of the population, the income of the consumers. So these things also play an important role. So fourth one is reasonable accuracy. Since statistic deals with averages, so average itself doesn't give an accurate result. So therefore, it gives a reasonable accurate results. And the fifth one is placed in relation to each other. So that means the data what we collect in statistics are mutually related to each other. Now, for example, the height of 40 people cannot be compared with the age of 40 people as the data is not related. That means the height is one particular factor, whereas the age is another factor. So when you're placing the relationship between each other, there should be a definite relationship. So say for example, the price of a commodity in relation with the demand of a particular product. So both are interrelated together. Whereas the height of a individual or height of people with the age of people are not related to each other. So when you're placing the relationship of the numerical data, we have to ensure that there is a definite relationship between each other. For example, x is called as independent variable, y is called dependent variable. Why we going to call y as a dependent variable? Because the value of y depends on x. So that is what you called as the relationship aspect. The sixth one, it says that predetermined purpose. So whatever the data we collect in statistics, which is a numerical value, is determined for a particular purpose. So we're going to keep a particular purpose and we're going to collect the data. And the seventh one is enumerated or estimated. So data can be either be collected by estimation, that is in the field of investigation, we going to collect the data, we going to compute that particular data, and we're going to set up the relationship between the data. So therefore, it is based upon enumeration or estimation. So we're going to estimate a particular outcome based upon the available data. So eighth one, it says that collected in a systematic manner. So statistics is used to collect the data in a systematic manner. Now, for example, first we're going to make a survey. So based upon survey, we're going to collect the data from a predetermined population. So from the population, we're going to extract the sample. From the sample, we're going to collect the data. So we're going to follow a particular process in collecting a data. So therefore, statistics basically deals with collection of data in a systematic manner. So whenever you collect the data haphazardly, then it's not going to give a particular outcome or a good outcome. It's going to give a wrong outcome. So if you want to give a appropriate, a correct picture of the outcome of any statistical research, outcome should be accurate, then the collection of data has to be systematically should be done actually. Now coming to the singular, the meaning of statistics. So under this, statistics refers to science in which we deal with the techniques and methods for collecting, classifying, presenting, analyzing, and interpreting data. So since we are dealing with collecting, classifying, presenting, analyzing, and interpreting data, each one of these are interrelated to the other. Now, for example, you can classify the data once you collect the data. Presentation has to be done based upon classification. Analysis can be done based upon the presentation. Interpretation can be done based upon the analysis. So here we're going to deal with the individual singular aspects of statistics. So in this we mean the statistical methods are defined here. So according to the singular sense, the definitions of statistics can be given like this. So according to Croxton and Corden, statistics may be defined as collection, presentation, analysis, and interpretation of numerical data. So according to Lovett, statistics is a science which deals with the collection, classification, tabulation of numerical facts as the basis for explanation, description, and comparison of phenomena. So this is how the singular principle is used in statistics. In singular principle, we're going to take each concept separately and we're going to interrelate that. Whereas in pluralistic principle, we're going to analyze the outcome in a different factors. That is how different factors are going to affect the outcome. That is what we're going to study in the pluralistic principle of statistics. So based upon the singular sense, the characteristic feature of statistics is follows. First one is it deals with collection of data, organization of data, presentation of data, analysis of data, and interpretation of data. So the first one is collection of data. That is how we have to collect the data, from where we have to collect the data, when we have to collect the data, what type data to be collected, whether you want to collect the quantitative data or qualitative data. So that has to be analyzed. So next one comes the organization of data. So we have to organize the collected data to make it to be more comparable and simple. So all the data, if it is in an abstract manner, cannot be used for comparison. So it has to be simplified. So when you simplifying the collected data, it deals with the organization of data. So presenting data is basically making data more intelligible, brief, and attractive. So we are compiling it to make it is very precise. So analysis data includes the application of statistical tools like mean, median, mode, or standard deviation, or doing hypothesis testing, all these things. So interpretation of data basically includes the comparison and drawing conclusions. Now here we may define an hypothesis. We may use a statistical tool. So based upon the value of the statistical tool, either we may accept an hypothesis or we may reject a hypothesis. So this is how we're going to interpret the data. So here basically includes the comparison and conclusions in a simple and a very easy language. So coming to the scope of statistics, the scope of statistics can be explained in three parts based upon the nature of statistics, the subject matter of statistics, and the limitation of statistics. So the study of statistics is basically to find out whether statistics is a science or art. So always there is a discussion like whether statistics is a science or whether statistics is an art. So speaking about statistics, statistics is both a science and as well as the art. So for example, like in statistics, we're going to deal with numbers, we're going to deal with mathematics. So since we are dealing with numbers, quantitative data, definitely it is a science. So whereas in statistics, we have to take a decisions to solve a particular problem. Now, for example, like if I want to collect a data, so as a statistician, I have to take a decision like pertaining to what type of method I have to use for collecting the data, whether I have to use the interview method, whether I have to use the observation method, whether I have to use the census method. So since we have to take a decision pertaining to a particular method to solve a particular problem, so we say it is an art. So subject matter of statistics is divided into two parts. One is the descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. So what is the descriptive statistics? It describes the data and consists of methods and techniques to explain the characteristic feature of data. So this method can be either a graphical one or computational one. So the second one is the inferential statistics. So it deals with the methods which describes the characteristics of population or making decisions concerning the population on the basis of sample results. That means here we're going to make a conclusion. So conclusion on what? Conclusion on the basis of the outcome of data analysis. So we're going to collect the data, we analyze it, and we make a conclusion out of that. So that is why it's called as inferential statistics. So inferential statistics deals with the methods which describes the characteristics of population or making decisions concerning the population on the basis of sample results. So apart from that, talking about the limitations of statistics, so statistic deals with only the numerical facts. So therefore, qualitative aspects cannot be dealt. And statistic deals with aggregates only. So as I told earlier, statistic deals with averages. It's basically a study of averages. So average itself is not accurate. It's only approximate. The third one, not the only method. So statistics is not the only method to study. There are many a time does not suggest the best solution for each problem. Why? Because it deals with averages. So to apply the statistics, the data what we collect should be homogeneous in nature. That is, homogeneity of the data is very much required. The results are true only on averages. That means whatever the data we have collected and done the analysis and interpretation, that interpretation is only true keeping the average into consideration. Without references, results may prove wrong. So the circumstances and conditions under which the conclusions are made in statistics have to be studied. Otherwise, the results may give a wrong impressions. So without the proper inferences, the overall outcome of any result analysis may be proven wrong in statistics. The seventh one, statistics can be used by experts only. So only experts can make a good use of statistics, and unqualified person definitely will find it difficult to understand and apply the concepts of statistics. The eighth one is the misuse of statistics is possible. So the misuse of statistics to seek a particular results is a possibility, more so when it is not easily understood. That means when you are not understanding the statistics properly, definitely there is a misuse of the statistics. So coming to the functions of statistics. So these are the functions of statistics. First one is expression of facts in numbers. So since it deals with the numbers, quantitative factors, so we're going to use statistics to express the numbers. So statistics helps in simple presentation in form of graphs and diagrams, percentages. The third one is enlarges the individual knowledge and experience. So statistics expands the horizons of individual knowledge and understanding of the concepts of the numbers. It helps to compare the facts, facilitates the policy formation. By doing analysis and interpretation of data, we can find out the precise nature of the problem based on which a particular policies can be framed. So, for example, if you take a fiscal policy, what you call it as a budget, the government is going to take a decision pertaining to allocation of resources based upon the census data. So, in that way, it facilitates the policy formulation. It helps the other science in testing their laws. So, many laws of economics, namely like law of demand, law of supply, Keynes theory of employment, can be verified by using statistical concepts. So it helps in forecasting. Extrapolating the present data aids in forecasting. That means if you have a historical data of a company from past 10 years, so this data can be extrapolated into the future to predict the future trend of a company based upon the historical data. So next one is the uses and importance of statistics. The first use importance for administrators. It's going to help the administrators to take decisions. Second one is importance for business, industry, and agriculture. Statistics has a lot of application. It is can be used for analyze the demand and supply, study the seasonal changes, what you called as the product life cycle. So we can study the product life cycle of an industry by using statistics. Statistics can be used for understanding the consumer in a better way. It can be used for studying the or understanding the trade cycles. Like this, so many things we can do with application of statistics. Statistics also is equally important in economics. So in fact, both economics and statistics go with hand in hand. So statistics is the basis of economics, as it helps in establishing the assumptions. Almost all the economic aggregates are measured with help of statistics. In fact, there is a separate branch of economics called as econometrics, which deals with the application of statistics in the economics. The fourth one, importance for politicians and in social field. For formulating social, economic, educational, industrial, and other policies, politicians draw a greater support from the statistic discipline. That means we can make policies based upon the data available in the statistics. So existing social problems can only be brought to forefront with the help of data analysis. The effectiveness of these existing policies for social change can be measured by using the statistical tools. So in that way, it's going to help in the social field also. So that means statistics can be used very effectively to study the social problems. The fifth one, importance for banking and insurance industry. So bankers use statistics for estimating the credit growth, risk analysis, portfolio management, and insurers for establishing appropriate premiums looking at the life expectancies. That means we use statistics in a n number of fields. For example, in insurance sector, we may use statistics to calculate the premium. The premium is based upon the life of a the premium holder. That means if the life of an individual is more, that means if he has taken a premium at a younger age, the premium will be very less. But as the age increases, the risk factor is going to increase. So as the risk increases, the premium also is going to increase. So that is how the statistics has an importance application in insurance industry. So what are the limitations of statistics? So statistics is not suitable to study the qualitative phenomena. Statistics can be used to study only quantitative phenomena. The qualitative factors cannot be measured in the statistics. Statistics does not study individuals. So statistics does not give a specific importance to individual terms. In fact, it deals with the aggregate of objects or the averages of objects. So statistical laws are not exact. So why it is not exact? Because we're not going to study individuals. We're going to study the aggregate of facts. So therefore, the conclusions given in statistics is only approximation. It's not very accurate. So that is where statistics is going to differ from mathematics. So mathematics will give very accurate results. That is why it is very widely used in subjects like physics. That is why it is very widely used in astronomy, astrophysics, chemistry, and other things. Statistics can be used in such cases where we have to get an approximate results. Statistics table may be misused. Statistics may be used only by experts. Otherwise, statistical methods are most dangerous tools on the hands of inexpert, because it can misinterpret that and it can give a wrong conclusions. Statistics is only one of the methods of studying a problem. statistics is definitely not the only method of studying the problem. There are different other things we can use it. In fact, we can use mathematics to study the problem. So therefore, statistics is not only the method of studying the problem. Statistical method do not provide complete solution of a problem, because problems are to be studied taking the background of the countries, cultures, philosophy, religion into consideration. So therefore, statistics is only one of the method of studying the problem. So next we come to the basic concepts of statistics. So the basic concept deals like with population and sample. So what do you mean by population? So what do you mean by a sample? So the main difference between the population and sample is, so population measure the quality parameter into consideration. So whereas sample is a measurable quality, and population is the broader aspect of a sample. Say, for example, if I want to take 10 students out of a particular college, first of all, I have to divide the population into different branches of in a college. Say, for example, like management students, or computer science students, or engineering students. Then I can take the selected number of students from each stream of these courses. So if I want 10 uh, students in commerce or management, so first of all, I have to take the population of commerce and management. Within that, I have to select the required numbers. So population is the broader aspect of a sample. So population is nothing but the measurable quality, and it is called as a parameter, whereas sample is a measurable quality, and this measurable quality is called statistic. So population is a complete set, sample is the subset of the population. So whatever the things we select out of the population is actually called as sample. So in case of population, the reports are a true representation of opinions, whereas in sample, reports have a margin of error and confidence interval. Because whatever the sample we select out the population may not exactly represent a population. There is a degree or a percentage of a sample representing a population. So based upon this, the degree of the margin of error, the confidence level comes into picture. If the sample is representing to a very large percentage of population, then the margin of error will be very low. Next one is in population, it contains all the members of the specified group. So when I say specified group, I mean to say the homogeneous group. Whereas in sample, it is a subset that represents the entire population. So coming to the branches of statistics, so we have descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. So what is the difference between the two? Descriptive statistics consists of collection, organization, summation, and interpretation of data. Example like surveying a class and finding out each person's favorite color, then presenting that data in form of a graph or a diagram. Whereas inferential statistics basically deals with collection of generalizing from samples to populations, performing hypothesis testing, determining the relationship among the variables, and making predictions. So when you do this one, when you come to a conclusion based upon the analysis of the data, then we call it as a inferential statistics. So inferential statistics basically used for making inferences from samples to population. So we're going to take a particular number of samples from a population. We're going to use a statistical tool, study the sample. Based upon that study, we conclude the population. That means based upon the study of sample, we can explain the statistic feature of a population. So that is how it becomes a inferential statistics. For example, stores may look at previous year's sales to determine what to order for the current year. That means we may take the historical data. Based upon historical data, we may give our inference or a conclusion for the future performance or to the current performance. That means we may take the historical data. Based upon that, we may tell, okay, how the store is going to do, or how the store's output or the profit is will be going to increase or decrease based upon the historical data. So this is how inferential statistics is going to play important role. So next comes the variable. So what you mean by a variable? So variable basically is nothing but the attribute of a person or a object. So for example, gender, age, height, and weight. So the data is actual value. It is also called as the measurement value, which is given to the variable. The collection of data creates a data set. So sometimes the questions may come like what you mean by data, data set, data value, population, and a sample. So this is how it is related. So variable includes the value which is going to vary. In other words, variables are attributes of a person or a object. Example, gender, age, height, and weight. So this keeps on changing. So the gender may be male or female. The age may be varying based on the value of a particular age. Similarly, height and weight also can vary. Therefore, they are called as variable. What is the data? The actual value, which is used in measurement or observation, which is given to variable, is called as a data. The collection of data creates what is called as the set of data, or called as the data set. So next one is a data value or uh, datum. So each value in the data set is called as the data value or datum. Population. So what is population? So consists of all the subjects that have been studied. So sample is subgroup of a population. So this is how there's a difference between the variable, the data, data set, data value, population, and sample. So what is the difference between qualitative variable and quantitative variable? So qualitative variables that can be placed in categories according to some characteristic feature or an attribute. Now, for example, hair color, gender, political affiliation, like this. So here the variables are created keeping the qualitative aspect into consideration. Whereas in quantitative variables, the variables are created or used based upon the quantitative values. So here the variables that are numerical in nature can be ordered or ranked. The example is weight of an individual. Okay, so the weight of the individual. So the age of the individual. So here you are broken down into two more subcategories called as discrete and continuous. So that means the quantitative variables can be further divided into discrete and continuous variables. So what do you mean by discrete variable? Here the values that can be counted must be an integer in number. So in other words, a discrete variable is a variable in which it is going to have a number which is integer in nature. Example, students in a classroom, population of a particular region or a particular place. So whereas continuous variable, the values can be between any two specific value obtained by measuring. So the next concept is classification of data. So what do you mean by classification of data? It is a systematic grouping of units according to their common characteristics. That means the grouping of data based on a homogeneous aspect or some common feature is called as the classification of data. So what are the functions of classification? It simplifies and makes the data more comprehensible. It helps in condensing the data. It brings out the points of similarity and dissimilarity. That means when you are grouping the data based on some characteristic feature, it's going to help to understand the what is the similarity and dissimilarity between them. Now, for example, you are grouping the data based on population. So here we may divide the population based upon the income level. Okay, so when you're dividing the population and income level, we can find out what is the similarity or dissimilarity that may exist within the each group of data. So the fourth one is comparison of characteristics of population, brings out the cause and effect relationship, prepares the data for tabulation. So these are the functions of classification. So classification of data can be done on various factors. So based on this, we have different classification. So first one is on the basis of nature of variable. We have quantitative data, qualitative data, discrete data, continuous data, chronological or temporal data, or geographical or spatial data. So on the basis of the source of collection, the classification can be a primary data or it can be a secondary data. On the basis of presentation, the data can be classified as a grouped data or ungrouped data. On the basis of content, so it can be classified as simple classification or manifold classification. So what is a quantitative data? So classification of data according to quantitative characteristics such as age, height, weight, okay, marks of your students. So it's called as quantitative data. For example, the age in years can be classified as less than 20 years, one category of the population, 20 to 25 years, one category of population, greater than 25, one category of population. So here what we're going to do, we're going to divide the population into different samples. So each sample is going to have these sort of features: less than 20 years, 20, 25 years, more than 25 years. So qualitative data deals with classification data according to qualitative characteristics such as the sex, honesty, intelligence, literacy, color, religion, marital status, all these things. Now, for example, dividing the gender as boy and girl, here you can see that this boy and girl is a qualitative aspect. So you cannot quantify it, it's a qualitative aspect. Similarly, intelligence, perseverance, perception, these things are qualitative factors. So next one is discrete data. So classification of data which takes the exact numerical values or whole values is called as a discrete data. So number of children in a family. So number of children in a family has to be a whole number. Either it can be 2 or 3. You cannot have a decimal numbers. So when you're taking the whole numbers or integers into consideration, we're going to call it as a discrete data. Now, for example, the size of uh, uh, the footwear that you have to purchase from a shop, the size has to be very exact. So it should be a whole number. So whereas in case of continuous data, the classification of data takes the numerical value based upon a certain range. It can include a fractional values also. So the weight of a baby girl of 1 month is given as 3.8 kg, but exact weight could be between 3.2 to and 5.4. So here we have a range of values. So when you're taking the range of values, then it is called as the continuous data. Next one is chronological or temporal data. When data are classified or arranged by their time of occurrence, such as years, month or week, days, so which is based upon a time series, then we're going to say as a chronological data. So in this chart, you can see the historical price of petrol and diesel. So the blue color line indicates the price of petrol. The brown color line indicates the diesel prices. So here the graph is plotted against the time scale versus the price per liter. Now this particular data takes the data of price and petrol from January 2002 to January 2013. So since we are taking a series of data over a period of time, it is called as the time series data. So chronological data classification deals with the time series data. Next, we have a geographical or spatial data. Here, when the data are classified by geographical regions, such as the state, country, or continent, town, villages, like that, then we call it as a geographical data. Next, we have group data. So data which is presented in groups or based upon a class interval, we called as the group data. So age can be between 20 25, 25 to 30. So for example, if I say there are 12 people who are in the age group of 20 to 25, we are grouping that particular data. So over a class interval. So when you are putting the numbers over a class interval, it is called as the group data. The other one is ungrouped data, a data which is presented individually. When you take individual numbers, it is called ungrouped data. When you take data in a class interval, it is called as the group data. The other one is simple classification. So classification data with one characteristic feature is called a simple classification. For example, the gender can be boy or a girl. So here it is a very simple classification. So then we go for manifold classification. Here the gender can be classified as boy or girl. So this boy or girl can be further classified as vegetarian and non-vegetarians. So this further can be classified based upon the age. So the boys belonging to age less than 20 years, boys belonging to greater than equal to 20 years. So like this, we can classify data by using various sub factors. So when you're taking sub factors and classifying it, then it is called as the manifold classification. Then classification can be done based upon primary and secondary data. When data which is directly collected by the researcher for the first time, it is called as the primary data. Secondary data, the data which is not directly collected by researcher, but it is collected through a source which is already been collected by some individual or from source, then it becomes a secondary data. So primary data can be collected through questionnaires, structured interviews, participant observation, unstructured interviews like this. Secondary data can be collected through official statistical sources like the government gazettes or from websites, letters, articles, newspapers, magazines. Then it becomes a secondary data. So the next one is what is the difference between primary and secondary data? So the primary data refers to the first hand data gathered by the researcher himself. Secondary data, here the data is collected by someone else and you are collecting the data from that particular source. So here the data in case of primary, it is a real-time data. Secondary data is a past-time data. So the process involved in primary data is very much involved, whereas in secondary data is quick and easy. The sources for primary data can include surveys, census, observations, experiments, questionnaire, personal interview, and other things. Whereas in case of secondary data, the sources can be the government publications or gazettes, websites, books, journals, articles, internal records, like that. So coming to the cost, primary data is very expensive, whereas secondary data is economical for use at. Collection time, primary data a lot of time, whereas secondary data takes a very short period of time, and primary data is always used for specific researcher needs. For a specific need, I am using primary data. Now, for example, if I want to study why the sales of a particular product of a company is not increasing, then I may have to do an interview technique, I may have to do a survey technique to collect the data from the consumers in the market. So here the data what I'm going to collect is used for specific purpose. What is that specific purpose? To study why the sales of a particular product of a company is not increasing. Whereas in secondary data may or may not be specific to researcher needs. So the primary data is available in a crude form, whereas secondary data is refined form, because many people will be using that data, they're going to refine it. So coming to the accuracy and reliability, primary data is more reliable, whereas secondary data is less reliable. For example, data available in Wikipedia. So the data available in Wikipedia is a secondary data. So somebody has put the data in the Wikipedia. So therefore, the reliability of this source of information may not be available or may not be very accurate. So these are other differences between the primary and secondary data. So whenever you're collecting primary data, not much precaution is required. But when you are collecting a secondary data, you have to be very much precaution. And I mean to say that very much precaution is very much required. So the primary data, the as far as the bias is considered, definitely there is a bias aspect is there, because the researcher who is going to collect the primary data may put his influence on the data. So therefore, bias aspect definitely may come in the primary data, whereas in secondary data may to certain extent be safe from the bias. So bias aspect may be reduced in the secondary data. So therefore, we can say that primary data is more reliable when it is accurately collected without any bias, whereas secondary data is less reliable because it is coming from different sources. So these are the other differences between the primary and the secondary data. So what are the methods of collecting primary data? So primary data can be collected from different sources. These are the 5 methods which are normally used for collecting primary data. So they are direct personal interview, indirect oral interviews, uh, information from correspondence, mailed questionnaire method, schedules sent through the enumerators. So direct personal interview. So here the persons from whom the information is collected are known as informants. The investigator personally meets them and asks questions to gather necessary information. It is suitable method for intensive rather than extensive field surveys. That means if you want to dig out more information, more specific information, then we may go for direct personal interview. It suits best for intensive study of the limited field. That means if you want to get a very specific information, then direct personal interview may be more useful. So what are the merits and demerits of the direct personal interview? The merits are the people willingly supply information because they are approached personally. Hence, more response is noticed in this method as compared to the other method. So the second one is the collected information are likely to be uniform and accurate. The third one is supplementary information on informants' personal aspects can be noted. If I want to get some extra information, that is also possible in the direct personal interview. So information on character and environment may help later to interpret some other results. That means I can collect data on wide range of aspects of a respondents. The answers for questions about which the informant is likely to be sensitive can be gathered by this method, because there are certain sensitive information which many people may not be willing to give it. In such cases, I can use direct personal interview. I can frame the question such a way that I may ask the question such a way that so I can collect the information from the informant, keeping the sensitive aspect into consideration. The wordings in one or more questions can be altered to suit any informant according to the situation. The explanation may be given in other languages also. Inconvenience or misinterpretation, therefore, can be avoided. Suppose if a person interview is conducted, the information given by the informant is not properly explained by a person. So we may ask questions in a language what he going to understand. So here the language can be changed from one respondent to the other respondent according to his convenience. So here both the respondent and the researcher both will feel comfortable using the proper language in understanding the information from the informants. So what are the limitations of the direct personal interview? It is very costly and time consuming. It is very difficult when the number of persons to be interviewed is very large and the persons are spread over in a wide area. So if you want to get information from wide range of people, then this may not be a proper method. The personal prejudice and bias are greater under this method. The researcher may put his personal influence on the the interview process. So therefore, the bias aspect is greatly getting affected in the outcome of the data collected from the personal interview. So indirect oral interview, this is another method. So under this method, the investigator contacts the witness or neighbors or friends or some other third parties who are capable of supplying necessary information. This method is preferred if the required information is on addition or cause of fire or theft or murder. So in an indirect oral interview, I may collect the data from the third party. Say for example, I want to collect the data about the crime scene or a fire accident or a particular theft or a crime or a murder, something like that, then I can use the indirect oral interview. So indirect oral interview, here the research is going to collect the information from the neighbor or a friends or from third parties. So inquiry committee appointed by governments generally adopt this method and get people's views and all the possible details of facts relating to the inquiry. So this method is suitable whenever direct sources do not exist or cannot be relied upon or would be unwilling to be a part of the information gathering process. So coming to the next method is the information from the correspondence. So here the investigator appoints a local agents or correspondents. They are also called as field correspondents, news correspondents in different places and compiles the information sent by them. The advantage of this method is that it is a very cheap and appropriate for extensive investigation, but it may not ensure the accurate results because the correspondents are likely to be negligent, prejudiced, or biased. In these cases, the information from the correspondence may not be very accurate. So information from correspondence, we are going to use the field agents or representatives of the company to collect the information from the field. So next one is mailed questionnaire method. So under this method, list of questions is prepared. It is sent to the informants by post. So these questions are normally multiple choice questions. So the list of questions is technically called questionnaire. A covering letter accompanying the questionnaire explains the purpose of investigation and the importance of correct information, and they request the informants to fill the blank spaces provided and to return the form within a specified time. So what are the merits of this mailed questionnaire? It's relatively very cheap, preferable when the informants are spread over the wide area. If I want to collect some information from some informants or respondents who are there in other country, I can use the mailed questionnaire method to collect the data. So what are the limitations? The greatest limitation is that the informant should be literate or able to understand the questions and give a proper reply to it. It is possible that some of the persons who receive the questionnaire do not return them. That means they may not find time or they may not show interest to give the answer and return that back to uh, the researcher. It is very difficult to verify the correctness of information furnished by the respondents. So there is no guarantee that the respondents are going to answer it. Somebody may answer the answers on behalf of the respondent. So therefore, the accuracy aspect is questionable. Schedules sent through enumerators. So under this method, the enumerators or interviewers take the schedules, meet the informants, and fill in the replies. Often, distinction is made between schedule and questionnaire. A schedule is a filled by interviewers in face-to-face situation with the informants. A questionnaire is filled by the informants, which he receives and returns by post. It is suitable for extensive surveys. Now, in case of schedule, what happens is, so here the data is collected from the interviewers. So they're going to ask the questions to the informants or the respondents. So respondents are going to give the answer. So based upon the answer given by respondents, the answer is filled by the interviewer. So this method can be used very extensively if you want to collect data from illiterate people, the people who cannot understand the questions, who doesn't understand the language of questions, who find difficult to read and write. So in such cases, you can collect the data by using the enumeration method. So what are the merits of enumeration method? So it can be adopted even if the informants are illiterates. Answers for this question of personal and pecuniary nature can be collected. So non-response is minimum as enumerator go personally and contact the information. That means we can ensure that information can be specifically collected from informants because the enumerator is personally go and meet the informants or the respondents and collect the data. And here the information is collected or more reliable, and enumerators can be properly trained for this particular purpose, and it is most popular method of collecting data. What are the limitations of this enumeration method? It's very costliest method. Extensive training has to be given for the enumerators for collecting data and uniform data, especially from illiterate people. Interviewing requires a lot of experience. Unskilled investigators may not be suitable for as a enumerators. So what are the merits and demerits of primary data? So what are the merits and demerits of primary data? So these are the merits and demerits of primary data. The collection of data by this method of personal survey is possible if the area covered by investigator is very small. That means if you're collecting data from a small place or a small geographical region, it becomes more useful. So collection of data by sending the enumerator is bound to be very expensive, and care should be taken twice that enumerator record correct information provided by the informants. So second one is the collection of primary data by framing a schedule or distributing and collecting questionnaire by post is less expensive and can be completed in a very short period of time. Suppose the questions are embarrassing or complicated nature, or the questions probe into personal affairs of individual, then the schedules may not be filled with accurate and correct information. Hence, this method may be unsuitable. So that means if you're collecting a very embarrassing data, I mean, suppose if you are asking any embarrassing questions to a respondent, and the questions is very complicated, so the respondent may not understand that properly. In such case, the accuracy aspect of the collected information becomes a questionable thing. The information collected for primary data is more reliable than those collected from the secondary data. So next coming to the sources of secondary data. So these are the sources of secondary data. So published sources, it can be reports and official publications of international bodies such as IMF, IFC, that is International Finance Corporation, UNO or United Nations organization, central and state governments such as reports of the Tandon Committee, the Pay Commission committees, something like that. Semi-official publications of various local bodies such as municipal corporations and district boards, private publications such as the trade and professional bodies such as Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce, the Institute of Chartered Accountants, financial and economic journals such as Commerce, Capital and Indian Finance, annual reports of joint stock companies, publications brought out by research agencies, research scholars. So these are all the published sources. So unpublished sources includes all statistical materials, not always get published. So these various sources of unpublished data, such as records maintained by various governments, private offices, studies made by research institutions, scholars. So such sources can also be considered to be unpublished sources. So unpublished sources basically we mean that the data is not yet published for the public at large. That means this data is not released to the public. So that is why it's called as unpublished sources. So the merits and the demerits of secondary data, it's very cheap to obtain. Large quantity of secondary data can be obtained through internet. Much of the secondary data available can be collected for many years. Therefore, it can be used to study the trend or time series. Secondary data is of value to the government, business and industry, research organization, and other things. So the next concept is the concept of classification of data. So the collected data are also known as the raw data or ungrouped data, and always it is an unorganized form and need to be organized. So converting the unorganized data into organized data and presenting in a meaningful and a readily comprehensible form, which can be understood by layman, is basically what is called as classification of data. So it is therefore essential for investigator to condense the mass data into more comprehensible and assimilable form. So that when you're going to compile the mass data into simple form, that is what we're going to call it as a classification of data. So it is a process of grouping into different classes or subclasses according to some characteristics is known as classification. So classification, tabulation go hand in hand. So classification, tabulation is concerned with the systematic arrangement and presentation of classified data. So what are the objectives of classification? So the following are the main objectives of classifying. It condenses the mass of data into a easy and in a assembling form. So it eliminates the unnecessary details. It facilitates comparison, highlights the significant aspect of data. It enables one to get a mental picture of a information and helps in drawing inferences. So it helps in statistical treatment of information collected. So these are the main objectives of classification. So what are the different types of classification? So we have four types of classification. One is chronological classification. Second one is geographical classification. The third one is qualitative classification. The fourth one is quantitative classification. In chronological classification, the collected data are arranged according to a order of time. This time can be expressed in years, months, weeks, or days. So data is generally classified in ascending order of time. For example, the data related to population, sales of a firm, imports or exports of a country are always subjected to chronological classification. The example, the estimates of birth rates in India during the year 1970 to 76. So here you can see the year and below you can see the birth rate. So this is what is called as chronological classification. In case of geographical classification, the data are classified according to geographical region. So we have countries here. Below that, you have the yield of wheat in kg per acre. So qualitative classification, in this type of classification, the data are classified based on same attributes or a quality aspect like the literacy, religion, employment, sex, intelligence. So these attributes cannot be measured with a scale. So for example, if the population may be classified in respect to one attribute, say sex, then we can classify the population as male and female. So this is what we call as qualitative classification. So here population can be classified male and female. So male and female can be further classified as employed or unemployed. So quantitative classification. So here we have classification based upon the number of students and the weights. So what are the characteristics of good classification? So characteristics of good classification is comprehensive, homogeneity, stability, clarity, suitability, and elasticity. So these are considered to be the characteristics of good classification. So what do you mean by comprehensive nature? To get better results, it is essential to classify data or the raw data into a comprehensive manner. It means that every item of the collected data should be put into some class or a category. That means when you are grouping data into similar groups or class or category, then the data becomes a good data. So any data, whatever you are collecting, the clarity has to be there. So clarity means it should give a clear picture of the data what you have collected. So the investigator collecting, analyzing data should classify the raw information into different classes clearly. The clear placement of items into different categories or classes basically means that there should not be a single item whose placement brings about the confusion in mind of the reader or the investigator. So by seeing the data, the any layman should be able to understand the available data. So then what you call it as the clarity. So homogeneity. So whatever data we collect, it should be homogeneous in nature. That means the data within the group should have a similar characteristic feature. In other words, the classification data based on a similar characteristics helps in easy and better understanding of the data. So suitability is one particular thing which very much required for a good classification. So a classified data can provide essential information and required results only when the composition of classes suits the objective of investigation. For example, for determining the literacy rate of a country, gathering information classifying based on the people's income and expenditure does not make any sense. So I mean to say that, so when you are understanding or studying the concept of literacy, studying data pertaining to income or expenditure is not at all related. So therefore, the collected data must be classified as educated or uneducated. If I want to study the literacy rate in the country, then the data to be classified as educated or uneducated. The fifth one is stability. There should be a stability in the basis of classification of data. It means that the basis of classification of data should not change with the investigation. In other words, a specific kind of investigation should be performed on the basis of same set of classification. That means the specific kind of investigation, whatever you're using, should be based upon the same set of classifications. So that means whenever you're going to classify data at any given point of time, that data what you are classified should remain the same. So it should not change over a period of time. If it is changing, we call it as instability is there. So stability has to be there again. So then next one is elasticity or elastic in nature. So data, whatever we are collecting should be elastic in nature. So elasticity in data means that if the investigator wants to change something in classification, because of any change in the purpose or objective of investigation, he or she should be able to do so. That means at any point of time, if I want to change the data, I should be in a position to change it. Now, say for example, I'm collecting data of a particular income group. Near future, if I find that that income group can be extended further into a bigger group, then I should be able to change it. So in such cases, we call it as elasticity of classification. So these are the six different characteristics of good classification: comprehensiveness, homogeneity, stability, clarity, suitability and elasticity. So thank you for watching this video, and don't forget to subscribe that, and you can reach out to me at the following email, raj.blitzkrieg@gmail.com. Thank you very much.